My name is Kim Casey Campbell. Casey's the call sign, which might sound like it stands for my initials, but it actually stands for Killer Chick. I spent 24 years in the US Air Force. So my call sign Killer Chick stems from my very first fighter squadron, where we get our names assigned to us, and being the only female fighter pilot in the fighter squadron, it seemed fitting with the airplane that I fly, the A-10 Warthog, so my call sign became Killer Chick. Well, I spent 24 years in the Air Force, so I had a lot of different units and a lot of different assignments. My first assignment was with the 75th Fighter Squadron out of Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina. That assignment started in 2002, early 2002, which meant that I deployed very quickly and spent very little time at Pope because we spent a lot of time rotating between Afghanistan and Iraq. After those deployments, I went on to the 422 Test and Evaluation Squadron at Nellis Air Force Base, where we were able to upgrade the A-10A to the A-10C. From there, I had some school experiences and at Fort Leavenworth, and then went back to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, where my career as an A-10 pilot started. Got my first opportunity to command at the 355th Operations Support Squadron. And then, as everyone eventually does, I went to the Pentagon. But I got the opportunity while I was in DC to be a fellow, the military fellow for the Air Force at the Atlantic Council. I spent a tour as the military assistant to the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, which I had spent my entire career working at this tactical level and now got the opportunity to work at a very strategic level. From there, finally got my reprieve, back to the A-10, back to flying, back to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, where I was a group commander for the 474th Air Expeditionary Group and the 612th Theater Operations Group. I thought I would retire from there. That didn't play out, and got an opportunity to go back where it all started for me at the Air Force Academy. It's where I started as a young cadet, where I got my commission, but back to the Air Force Academy to teach as an instructor in military and strategic studies, and then also as the director of the Center for Character and Leadership Development. So that's 24 years in a nutshell. My decision to join the Air Force really, I think, came out of nowhere. Well, it came out of somewhere, but I had never thought about joining the military at all until in 1986, 5th grade for me. I was watching the launch of the Space Shuttle Challenger, and there was something in that moment. I think many of us remember where we were as we watched the tragedy kind of unfold before us. That
3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff.
There was something that I realized in watching that, and thankfully I wasn't by myself. I had parents around me that I connected with, in terms of this idea that these astronauts died doing something that they believed in, something that was bigger and more important than themselves, something that they believed in so strongly that they were willing to risk their life. There was something for me that I connected with in that. And then I think just, in the initial stages of the launch was this thrill of flight, right? To do something different and the exhilaration of flight. So I connected with that, and very quickly after that, I had some conversations with my parents. I was really, just something about it stuck with me. And so I decided right there, maybe within a couple days, that I was going to be an astronaut. And as I talked to my parents about this, my dad had said, well, many of the astronauts are actually pilots, and a lot of them had gone to the Air Force Academy. And that's really when I learned that my dad had gone to the Air Force Academy. He had graduated, and he had spent 5 years in the Air Force. But I didn't really know about that until I had made my decision and my commitment to go to the Air Force Academy. Kept up with this goal, I kept up with the plan, and I think that's when they realized I was committed to this. And I had really flipped a switch in terms of now I started doing my homework, I paid more attention in school, I started doing a lot of different activities. Then I got to make a trip to DC to the National Air and Space Museum, and I bought this poster of these women pilots, and they were the WASPs, so the Women Air Force Service Pilots. I didn't know any personally. I didn't know much about them, quite honestly, but I had this picture that hung on my wall all throughout middle school and high school of these women who had come before me. I almost feel very naive in how much I didn't know about what they did and all the difficulties that they experienced, and still could serve their country in a time of war and, you know, to do something that really hadn't been done before. So I think when I look back, those women set the stage for all of us and what they did and what they were able to do. When my dad was there in 1970, there were no women. So I think there was this part of him that was really scared to send his daughter off to the military. My dad was like, if my little girl is going to the Air Force Academy, then I want her to be ready. So he was very determined to make sure that I was ready. We ran the hills in San Jose in our combat boots, just trying to make sure that I was ready physically. I also, I had done a lot of cross-country soccer type events in high school, and he wanted to make sure my upper body strength was there. So he installed a pull-up bar in the bathroom so that I could do pull-ups anytime I went in or out of the bathroom. So he did all of these things. So I think there was this fear of me going, but they knew they weren't going to be able to hold me back. I mean, they didn't want to. They wanted to support me, but they also wanted to make sure I was ready, that I would be ready to go, both mentally and physically. Yeah, I think I have spent really my entire career being in the minority in terms of being a woman. When I showed up at the Air Force Academy, I think we were roughly 16% women there. I learned very quickly that if you can prove yourself and you're credible, then the rest really doesn't matter. Being at the Air Force Academy, I felt like these were my brothers. They were gonna look out for me. They were gonna be on my side. But I also realized that I gained respect because I could hang with them, right? I could stay in the runs. I could do the push-ups, the pull-ups. I maxed the physical fitness test in my first year there. Like, those things helped prove my credibility. And I think that's what helped pave the way for me. So when I walked into my fighter squadron on day one, and now we're talking, you know, I'm one of, I think, 33 female fighter pilots in the entire Air Force at the time out of 3,500. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I think I was worried that if I made a mistake or if I failed or I didn't meet expectations, like, there was this pressure that I put on myself that I would ruin it for all the women that followed me. But that's the pressure I put on myself. Like, no one said that to me. That's just how I felt because I realized that, you know, there just weren't many of us. And so I just vowed to work as hard as I could. I wanted to, you know, prove that I belonged there, that I was credible, that I was capable in the airplane. You know, the jet doesn't care what gender, you know, they don't care anything about who sits in the airplane, right? And it turns out, like, the guys in my squadron didn't either. They just cared that I was credible and capable. And then we went to war. I mean, then we went to combat, and I was able to prove myself in combat very early in my career. And so that really paved the way. I think this idea of be credible, be competent, put in the work, you know, and try to maintain a good attitude through it all, you know, that would be, you know, that's what worked for me. That's why I think that I was successful even in this male-dominated environment. When I think about traits that are important for fighter pilots, I'm going to go back to the weapons school motto. Air Force Weapons School is the equivalent to Top Gun. And the motto there is be humble, approachable, and credible. And I know that's probably a little bit ironic because I think most people think of fighter pilots as pretty cocky and arrogant. But I realize that the best fighter pilots that I've worked with, the best leaders that I've worked with, had those three traits. They were humble, they were approachable, they were credible, right? So humble is, you know, this whole idea of, like, if you make mistakes, you got to own it. You got to admit it, you got to own it. And being approachable so that people will come talk to you about what they've learned, what skills they have. And then being credible, well, I mean, you got to be credible in the airplane. But those other two characteristics, I think, are a bit unique and probably not what most people expect when they think of fighter pilots. I think probably most importantly, my military training, and I'll just focus on my first really basic training and my time at the Air Force Academy, which was kind of my first introduction to this military lifestyle, was that it wasn't about me. It was about a team, and it was about working together to succeed. And that, you know, quite honestly, many of the challenges that we faced, we couldn't do alone. And this, you know, this idea of relying on the team, that everyone plays a role in the overall team success, but you have to work together as a team in order to succeed. I think that's probably, when I look back at my training, the thing that sticks out to me most was, one, the hard times that we went through, but how much stronger we became as a team because of them. I feel like my role as an A-10 pilot was always to support our troops on the ground in the things that they did that were incredibly courageous. Like, I was overhead providing support, but they were the ones in it. To me, like, that's courage. Like, I feel like we were always there to provide support, but watching them walk through some of these terrible conditions, terrible terrain, like, I don't even know how they got in some of those places, days at a time out in the field. Like, to me, that's courage. Briefing with them before a mission and hearing about these raids and things that they were going to do. I mean, the benefit of being at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan was meeting with teams before they would go out to do a mission, and then meeting them when they came back. And just these amazing things that, I couldn't fathom, the courage that they had to do the things they did. So I don't know that I have one person. I think it's our ground troops in general, and watching the amazing things that they did. I mean, we were always there to provide support, but they were the ones on the ground in it doing the job. Over time, I realized that this career that I wanted to go do, this idea of being a fighter pilot, at first it's this excitement of it. It's the thrill of flying and becoming a fighter pilot. Like, it just sounds cool, right? But I think over time I also realized, especially when I decided that I wanted to fly the A-10, that there was a lot more that went with it. I realized that in order to save lives on the ground meant that I would also have to take them. I don't know that I spent a lot of time deliberating about it. It was just, it was just part of the mission. It was part of what we do. But I think from the cockpit of an A-10, we're so focused on doing our job in terms of what we've been trained to do. We're identifying the friendly location. We know where the enemy is at. We are abiding by any restrictions. We're thinking about the right target. We're thinking, or the right weapon for the target. There's so many things that are going into this, pulling the trigger or hitting the pickle button, our weapons release button. There's so much tactics and discussion and thinking that goes into it that you really don't think about kind of what you're actually doing. I was so focused on not missing the target and not messing up. Don't want to make a mistake, because I know if I make a mistake, that has consequences for our troops on the ground. So I really didn't think about it. I remember it just because I remember the mission just in terms of what we were doing. But I didn't really think about it in that context. I thought about saving lives more than anything, and doing what I had been trained to do. Yeah, the hardest thing I've ever had to do was land an airplane that probably shouldn't have been landed. I really wasn't sure if I was going to live or die on a mission. I've had some close calls, but nothing where I really didn't know if I was going to make it. I think just once. For me, that really life-changing mission where I wasn't sure if I was going to live or die happened on April 7th, 2003, doing a close air support mission over Baghdad, and my aircraft was hit by an enemy missile. As soon as it happened, I knew immediately that I had been hit. I mean, the jet nosed over, pointed towards Baghdad below, and I pulled back on the control stick, and nothing happened. At that point, I'm in just reaction mode. I remember looking down at my ejection handles and just thinking, like, that's the last thing I want to do is eject over Baghdad, where we had just been engaging with the enemy. And I fell back on the training of just try to figure out what's going on, analyze the situation. But what I realized in that was that I had lost all the hydraulics on the airplane. At this point, my only option is eject over Baghdad or work to get the jet in our backup emergency system. So thankfully I was able to do that. I flipped that switch and the airplanes just slowly started to climb out and away from Baghdad. So I survived getting out of Baghdad, but then it was like I had to figure out how to get home in this really significantly damaged airplane. So I knew that I could either fly the airplane back and eject or fly the airplane back and attempt to land. I spent a long time thinking about it. I had an hour to fly the airplane home, and I decided that I was going to try to land the airplane. I felt confident in that decision. But even that whole way home, it's, that worry of like, did I make the right choice? Did I make the right call? Or is this going to result in something terrible? Thankfully, I was able to get the airplane on the ground. But that hour home was a long time to contemplate whether or not you're going to live or die from a choice that I would make. I don't know. A lot was going through my mind at that time. I really tried to focus on the task at hand, but I was also aware of all the bad things, right? I might crash, I could die. Maybe the landing was not the hardest part. Maybe it was the flight home. I don't know, but both were incredibly mentally and physically challenging. Mentally from a perspective of staying focused, having the right mindset, that I could land the airplane and having the confidence to do that. Physically, because flying an airplane in manual reversion is just challenging. It's a tough airplane to fly. It's heavy. It's a 47,000-pound airplane, and you're flying it on cranks and cables. It was exhausting. And thankfully, I remembered the stories of the pilots who came before me who talked about their experiences flying in manual reversion, and they shared that you fly with the right hand on the stick and then left hand on the stick and both hands on the stick so that when it comes time to land, you're not exhausted and you can land normally. But yeah, that trip back home and landing the airplane was by far the hardest thing I've ever had to do. So in that trip home, I really tried to stay focused. We went through lots of emergency procedures and our checklists, and honestly, I think my wingman, my flight lead in that case, was trying to keep me focused as well, because I think he knew that it's a long time to consider whether you're going to survive or not. But I could occasionally feel my mind wander of like, what if I don't make it back? And I did reflect a little bit on this idea that I hadn't done everything I wanted to do in life. I hadn't, I'd been married for a pretty short time. My husband and I barely lived with each other because we were both deploying nonstop because of the aftermath of 9/11. I hadn't had kids yet. It made me really reflect a little bit on all the things that I hadn't done in my life that I wanted to do. I think in some ways, the goodness of it is that after I landed safely, it really helped me focus and reprioritize on my life and what was important. I think after I landed from the April 7th mission, I was on an adrenaline high for sure, but I compartmentalized everything. I just kind of tucked it away. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't really want to deal with it. There was a war going on. There were missions to be flown. We needed every pilot we could get. So I didn't think about it. I guess I couldn't bring myself to think about it or talk about it. When I got home, that was a different story. I think I realized that I couldn't just keep it compartmentalized and tucked away forever. My husband and I finally were able to have a conversation about it. My husband is an A-10 pilot as well, so he knew exactly what I had done and what I had gone through and kind of the decisions that I had made. And I think that's kind of when we had some really good conversations about this, when you almost die or you're not sure if you're going to survive. Walking through that mission and talking through it again, I reflect on it all the time now. I think in a good way, though. Like I pull the lessons. I think about, the fact that I did survive. I think about the good things. I think about landing and hearing the guys from my squadron. They had been standing by watching and waiting and hearing their voices over the radio. Like I can still hear them. And part of it is I have the audio and the video from this mission and I've listened to it. But it's so fresh in my mind. Like I can hear them just welcoming me home. And like, it was just such a sense of, I had gone through this hard thing and these guys in my squadron, they were my brothers and they were just like, welcoming me back. I think about that a lot. I think about maybe more so in having recently retired, just reflecting on the goodness of what I have been able to do, but also the impact that serving has had on me.
Just a quick word from our sponsor, Veterans Help Group, and we'll get right back to this episode. As someone who served alongside many of our nation's heroes, earning my wings, deploying to Afghanistan with so many others, I've seen firsthand the toll that service takes on our brothers and sisters in arms, myself included. Today I want to speak directly to the families of veterans we've lost. The PACT Act has opened new doors for survivors who may have been denied benefits in the past. If your veteran passed away from conditions now linked to toxic exposure, whether from burn pits, Agent Orange, or other service-connected causes, you may be eligible for dependency and indemnity compensation. DIC provides over $1,600 per month to qualifying surviving spouses, plus additional support for children. Even if you were previously denied, the PACT Act allows for reevaluation of claims and retroactive payments. Your service as a military family didn't end with your veteran service, and neither should your benefits. These aren't handouts, they're earned benefits. If you need help with the DIC claim or just navigating the VA in general, please contact Veterans Help Group at 855-233-6144 or visit their website at veteranshelpgroup.com. Veterans Help Group does not guarantee outcomes, and past performance does not guarantee future results. The company is neither a law firm nor affiliated with any part of the U.S. government, including the VA. And now, just a quick word from our sponsor, HelloFresh, and we'll get right back to this episode. We love HelloFresh in our house. We've used it to feed our family of 5 for 5 years and counting, to include what we ate last night, which happened to be a barbecue chicken and coleslaw with sliced potatoes. I can already hear some of the grunts like AJ busting my chops about that being the kind of thing a pilot would eat, but it is good. Fall is here, and with it comes cooler nights, heartier meals, and the craving for something warm and satisfying. That's where HelloFresh comes in, bringing you comforting, chef-designed recipes and fresh seasonal ingredients right to your door. I've been on a bit of a health kick for the past 2 months myself, and HelloFresh has made this easier. We select meals with high protein and veggies that have kept me a little bit leaner and more energized. They also offer 3 times more seafood on the menu now at no extra cost. I use this 3 to 4 nights per week, and you should too. The best way to cook just got better. Go to hellofresh.com/combatstory10fm to get 10 free meals and a free item for life, 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's hellofresh.com/combatstory10fm to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. And now, back to this episode.
I don't think I realized when I joined the military how close I would become with the people that I served with. Like, these people have become my best friends. We have stayed in touch over the years. And I think, it's not like I didn't realize that I would make friends. I think it's just you don't realize how close you're going to become. I think when you go to war together and you go through hard things and you lose friends, I think it brings you so close. I look back at some of those times and how many friends and colleagues and that I've lost over the 24 years is too many. We were recently at a ceremony at the Air Force Academy Cemetery, and I realized how many people I knew that were buried there. And that's just, I don't know, it just puts things into perspective a little bit, I think, I don't know, any loss is a terrible one, but I think the one that, for me, that, I don't know, maybe it was like one of the first ones that really hit home for me was we had come home from Iraq and Afghanistan, and as another one of our units was spinning up, one of our good friends, Cosmo, came out to Colorado to do some skiing, and we were all skiing together. Great trip, tons of fun, and it was his trip to have some vacation time before going to Afghanistan. He went home, and a little bit later, he was leading a 4-ship one night on their upgrade training mission out in Alaska. But immediately after takeoff, he got spatially disoriented and didn't recover. He hit the ground and didn't make it. I think that was hard because, we had all just been together, and it was training, right? This was before they were going to combat. And it just, I don't know, it's always a little bit of a reality check. It puts things in perspective, again, it made my husband and I have some conversations about, were we ready if something like that happened? I mean, I guess it's like, we think we're invincible as fighter pilots, and then something like this happens and you realize you're not. And I think, honestly, my advice would be more of what to do in the moment of like, don't be afraid to tell people how important they are in your life. Don't be afraid to share with people, how much you care about them and how important they are to you. I think a lot of times we realize it's too late and those things were never said. I don't know, there's part of me that worries that we focus so much on the dark side of the veteran experience that we lose sight of all the good. Yes, there is darkness, there is, the injuries, the fatalities, the suicides, all of those things are the really negative. And I worry that this young generation is not going to join the military as much as we've seen in the past because they've seen this as what they think the military is about. And that is a piece of it, and we have to be aware of that. But there's so much goodness that has come from service as well.
Just a quick word from myself before we dive back into this combat story. Many of you know our previous interviews with A.J. Pasciuti, Marine sniper, recon operator, and the man who tracked, hunted, and ultimately eliminated Iraq's deadliest sniper, Juba. This was an enemy responsible for deaths of over 100 Americans, some say up to 140, many of which were filmed and posted online. A.J., who was just a very humble, very young Marine at the time, took that fateful shot, putting an end to so much pain for so many families. He never took credit for it, and over the years that story's changed and been retold countless times. I'm incredibly proud to let you know that you can get your hands on AJ's new book, Dark Horse, Harnessing Hidden Potential in War and Life, a book I asked him to write after I interviewed him, immediately after I interviewed him. It's part memoir, part roadmap, a look at the lessons AJ learned through combat and throughout his career, and how they can help all of us find strength and purpose. If you enjoy Combat Story, you're going to love this book. To get a copy, head to combatstory.com/darkhorse. That's combatstory.com/darkhorse. It's packed with details and insights that we never got to cover in our interviews, and I know you're going to love it. Now, back to this combat story.
I think my favorite tradition, if you will, or just something that we did all the time, I miss the Friday nights in the bar. I think people have this perception of what goes on, and you see it in Top Gun. There's a lot of drinking and stories and things, but I think to me it was like this bonding time of hanging out together, and the best stories come out in the bar on a Friday night. Probably some of the most impactful stories. I mean, when I was early in my training, I remember a former A-10 pilot, prisoner of war, Rob Sweet, goes by Sweetness, came to our bar on a Friday night to talk to us about flying the A-10, getting hit over Iraq, and just what he went through. And as part of that discussion, he talked about some of the other pilots that had been hit and what they did and what they endured. And he talked about flying in manual reversion. Thankfully I listened, right? These were things that I didn't know would apply to me at the time, but I miss the Friday night discussions. There was so much goodness that happened. I mean, they were a lot of fun too. I think probably some of the most fun times I've had have been in combat, especially when we're in more remote places, which is, I know, a little bit abnormal for the Air Force, but when you're bored or when there's not many external things that you can do, you make up a lot of fun things to do. I don't know, it's shenanigans. That's probably the best word that I could describe for those times, is shenanigans. That's pretty much what we get ourselves into. Yeah, I know sometimes even in combat, you have this moment of I'm getting paid to do this. This is my job, this is what I do, and it's so cool. I think back to Afghanistan, flying beautiful mountains and streams, and you're flying overhead, and it's peaceful, which is a weird thing to say in combat, but it was just beautiful. And just seeing things from that perspective is really neat. And then I would also say the opposite of that is being down at 100 feet, raging through the desert on training missions, going through the canyons and, you know, popping up, dropping bombs, shooting the gun. Like, I don't know, it's fun. I mean, these were awesome training missions where we got to do all these really cool things. It's pretty interesting. I mean, if you think about like all the hard things that we go through, kind of all the tragedy, the terrible side, I think the good outweighs the bad, right? The camaraderie, the sense of community. I mean, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I wouldn't change my path for anything. And there's been challenges, there's been failures, there's been a lot of, there's been some negatives for sure, but the positives outweigh that. I think all those experiences, even the bad ones, made me who I am today. They made me the person that I am. I think they've made me a better mom, a better wife, just a better person overall. So I think it's that we value the experiences that we've gone through, and we've tried to pull the good, even from the bad. I think age and spending 20 plus years in the military has certainly changed my views on combat, going to combat, and war. It's interesting because I think 9/11 changed the world for all of us. For me, 9/11 happened when I was in A-10 training. The world changed, my life changed, my view on my role in the Air Force changed, and I knew that we were going to war. I wanted to go because I wanted to be there with my unit, and I wanted to be there with the troops on the ground. We were so afraid of being left behind. Like, we didn't want to be the pilot that was at home that got left home, or the squadron that wasn't chosen to go. We all wanted to be there. 5 years later, I will tell you that the deployments drag on a bit, and you're like, gosh, going back again and more time away from the family. So I think it's, at first you're excited, you want to go to combat, you want to have that experience and say you've been there, you've done it. And then once you have, you realize like, it would be better if there was no war at all, because you realize the cost, right? The cost of losing friends, the cost of being away from your family. The cost is high. I'm torn even saying that, because I also realize like it shaped so much of my life and so much of my career, and there were so many lessons for me that came out of it. It's funny how, I joined the military, I joined the Air Force, and all I thought about was being a fighter pilot. Like, I don't know, it was a fun, cool job. It ideally was going to get me to this goal of becoming an astronaut someday. I had no idea, though, the impact of being a fighter pilot and the passion that I would have for it in terms of the mission and supporting our troops on the ground. For me, I found my purpose. Like, I found my calling, so much so that when it came time to take that path to go towards test pilot school and the astronaut program, I didn't want to give up flying the A-10. Like, I loved it so much. Interesting how your priorities change over time. Yeah, for the young kids out there thinking about joining the military, I would say go for it. Like, if this is what you want and this is what you're passionate about, then go for it. It's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, there are going to be challenges, but you have to want to do this for you, not because somebody else wants you to do it. You have to do it because it's something that you want to do. Serving our country is incredibly powerful. I mean, I think it's just, it's a commitment. There's something out there bigger and more important than yourself. I don't regret any of it. I don't want to change the path. I love all of it. I'm glad I did it. There were definitely some pieces and parts that I didn't love, but I wouldn't change it.